Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and the Spirit dropship build. I'm Brickman117 and this is part 6. For those of you that aren't interested in how this thing goes together, you'll be pleased to know this is the last build video for the Spirit. And for those of you that do enjoy seeing how it goes together and have been following along from the beginning, I'm sorry to say that this is the last build video, but it's been fun and I want to thank you for your support along the way. The first thing I wanted to do was finish off the exterior cladding of these back walls. To do this, I was going to need to put all of the troop bays back together, the door and etc. But this was easier said than done because I've been pillaging parts from the completed section of the build through the design process of the next phase of the build. The simple reason for doing this is I don't know if I'm definitely going to need a part. You see the end result, whereas it might go through a number of different variations before I get there. So I don't want to be rummaging through boxes which I think I need to then later discard and say, I'm not going to use that. It would be a massive waste of time. So I simply take the parts off the completed build whilst I'm doing the design. Once I'm happy with it and I know I'm going to need more of those parts at the end of the build, I will then go through the rest of the Cybertrucks to scavenge all those parts and finalize all of the parts of the build that I had previously completed. So if you see bits throughout the build that are missing, and obviously missing, it's because they are. At the end of this video, I will then go back and fill in all of those gaps ready for the finale video. So as you can see, I've added some bricks with studs on side here to attach the rear plating to. But before I can do that, I need to complete the curved wall of the troop bays. They don't currently come far enough back, but I can't just extend both of those purple curves because one of them is the door and the door doesn't open all the way to the back. So it needs to be a stationary curve. I also need to add a grey stripe after that, which steps down, so is sure to create some challenges. As you can see, I've already added the extra purple slope to the top, the roof section of the curve, because the roof section doesn't move. So that was nice and easy. Moving on to the other part, which is just the side of the door. This wasn't quite so easy. It had to be its own separate assembly. So I basically mirrored what I'd done for the door and attached it to the fixed part of the troop bay. This was fine apart from the fact it left me with this gap. Now this was an awkward angle in a previous part of the build, which I came up with a solution for by using these 1x4 hinged plates, but I only need them 1x2, so those parts weren't going to work here, so I needed a different solution. It also needed to be different because there's a gap between the troop bay door and the roof, which is supposed to be there, but I don't want that gap after the door. So the solution I came up with here, I tried a number of different things that didn't work, and eventually it was just by putting these black wedge pieces with studs on this angle and then using this combination of hinge clips allowed me to create that perfect angle. So when you get that purple curved piece in there, it closes up that gap nicely, and then when you open the door, you've still got that part there. It doesn't open with the door. So that was the easy part, believe it or not. Now I had to create the grey stripe. But because I'd stepped down the grey stripe from the purple roof by one plate, it changes the radius of that curve, which I knew was going to create problems. So I started by just replicating the first two curved plates, just to give me a good starting point. I did this for both the top, which connects into the sloped part of the roof, as well as the curved part of the roof, because none of that moves. And then for the bottom, I just connected it to the fixed part of the rear section of the ship. But that left me with this awkward gap. You can see here, an extra sloped piece isn't going to fit in there. It's too big. So I tried all sorts of different things to try and close this gap up in a convincing way. And then ultimately came across these parts, which seemed absolutely made for the job. 4 of these, 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom. They close that gap up so nicely. It's like it was meant to be. And getting this section finalized was a huge relief for me because it was another part that I wasn't looking forward to tackling, but I was so glad once I'd got it done. With that done, I was able to move on to the cladding for the back of the troop bay. And as you can see, this is what I came up with. I wanted to try and follow the contours of the troop bay as best I could, but ultimately those parts just didn't exist, so this was the best I could do. Once I had this, I was able to dummy test it onto the actual back of the troop bay. It just clips in with those 4 studs on side bricks, and once I checked that everything was okay there, didn't interfere with everything, I was able to work on my favourite part, detailing. And once again, I just went with my gut. This is what I came up with, and I'm relatively pleased with it. I also managed to install some more lighting, and if you're wondering why I'm choosing that blackish brown coloured fan piece, that's a really long story, but I do have blue ones as well. I think in the final video I might show it with both. I've been back and forth far too many times. To be honest with you, I don't 100% like either of them, so I think I might just show it with both, but you'll get to see that in the final video when I show all the lights with the lights off and so on. You can make your mind up then. I've also actually modified this slightly since. The black 8x2 plate holding the light in from behind, I've changed for a clear plate because I realized those lights are perfectly situated to light up the troop bay, because the lights actually project forwards and backwards. So you get light coming out the back and you get a really bright light shining into the troop bay, a blue light, which actually looks really cool, which again, you will see in the final video. So with all that detailing done, once I've put it on, I just needed to try it with the roof of the cockpit back on to make sure everything still goes on and off nicely without interfering with everything. And as you can see, works okay. And with that said, time to move on to the next bit of the build, which was finalizing the back of the cockpit so I can create the gun that hangs off the bottom of it. So I came up with this sub-assembly to attach to the bottom of the cockpit, just to improve the shaping of this area of the ship. I also added in a few more contact points for the canopy or the roof section of the cockpit, just to give it a bit more purchase and strength when it is connected in. And as you can see, once it's on and in place, you wouldn't know it's a sub-assembly. It does come off quite easily again, but when it's together, it's pretty seamless. The only things I added on here with these pieces, which are the tiny little gun pieces from the old Mega Bloks Pelican gunship. You can just pop these off of these side guns, and I thought they just added a nice little bit of detailing to the back of the cockpit. And with that bit done, it was time to create the gun. And this is where, for some people, it all went wrong. By once again spitting in the face of accuracy and going my own way by creating this. And I know what you're thinking, what is that? But hear me out. It's got lights, and lights are cool, so therefore it must be cool. As you can see, I've incorporated another blue light here with a dodgy battery. A lot of these lights have got dodgy batteries. I've got some more coming. I'll replace all the batteries for the final video, but as you see, when you put it on, it gives quite a nice glow. It will look better when I dim the lights. But even more impressive than that, I wanted to incorporate some kind of activation feature. So by twisting the side fins, it allows you to lower and raise the gun, which I had to incorporate. I don't care what it looks like. I wanted that to be there. It's just something that made me happy, and I thought would be the sort of thing you'd probably see on an official build. So I really wanted to incorporate that. The gun's returned to its up position by rubber bands, the official rubber bands that come in some of the sets I showed you earlier for the seat. They're not rigged properly at the moment. I've since changed this, and they do return the gun nice and easily, so they spring back up. And it just basically, you twist it and it goes down, and then when you release it, it pops back up again. And the best part, to attach it to the underside of the cockpit, you just slide it into one of the tubes in the underside of the exposed bricks, and then you can just twist it from side to side. And that makes me happy, whether it's accurate or not. So the only part of the ship left to be finalised is the nose plates that go on the end of each troop bay, and these were actually the first part of the ship that I made all the way back in part 1 of the build. I basically made the template for them and put some rough detailing on it just to give an idea of what it was going to look like and get the size and shape of it, and then I said I'd come back to it towards the end of the build, and I'm glad I did, because they've been a right pain. I've really struggled to come up with a design I'm happy with due to part limitation in terms of size, shape and colour. But before I started working on these, I realised I needed to create the stand for this ship, because up until now I've just had it sat on the end of 2 troop bays on the table. It's perfectly balanced, doesn't fall over. That's how it's been throughout the entire build. It's just been a really convenient way to build it. But of course, if I want to start working on the end of those troop bays, I really need to get it off of the ground and onto a stand. And so I came up with this. This is purely a show stand. A lot of people wanted me to create a themed stand, which I would like to do in the future. But in regards to a set stand, I thought that this was more appropriate. And at this point, I just wanted something that I could use to display the ship on once it was done. And as you can see, it couldn't be easier. You simply slide this section of the stand into the hole I left remaining right below the cockpit, and then the two other prongs just slot into these gaps underneath each troop bay. It's really easy to get on and off. It's not clipped in at all. And then once it's on there, it's perfectly balanced. Once the ship is on the stand, you can move it around. It does wobble, but I've got no concerns about it falling over. That Technic structure is super, super strong. And unless you actually physically snapped it by leaning on it, I don't think it will ever go anywhere. So a little bit of wobble is just fine. And now that it's off the ground, I can work on putting these nose plates on, and I can actually stand back and look at it and see what looks right and what doesn't. And what you see here is my first draft of a completed nose plate, which I was very happy with until I decided I wanted to incorporate lights into the nose plate, similar to what I've done at the back of the troop bay. So I came up with this, as you can see, incorporated the light. I had to completely rework the entire structure of the nose plate to be able to incorporate this light. But once I attach it to the troop bay and turn the light on, it made my mind up that I wanted to incorporate the light. The only problem is that I still kind of preferred the first draft look outside of the light. I like the light, but I prefer the design of the original one. So this created a bit of a dilemma, which I figured I'm going to have to go away and think some more about. So in between now and the final video, I'm going to try and rework these nose cones again to still incorporate the light, but just make me feel more comfortable with the overall look of the nose plate. And whilst I'm doing that, I'll also be going through the Havoc staffs and the Cybertrucks that have yet to be pinned to get all of those parts out to fill in the gaps that you would have seen through the build. I can't put the other side of the troop bay on at the moment because I've pillaged some parts from there. And also I need to get the rest of the detailing for the actual troop bay stations inside the troop bay because I don't have all the bar pieces yet. I need to get those from some sets as well. But rest assured, by the time it's done, for the overview video, I would have put new batteries in the lights, checked all the contacts, I would have put all the missing pieces in there, and any tiny little bits that I'm not quite happy with, I will adjust, improve on, and make sure it's absolutely spot on and ready for an overview video where we'll go right through it. We'll talk weight, dimensions, look, and how happy I am with the finished result. But until then, as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button, and we'll see you next time.